Welcome back to your newest obsession, the Neurospicy Mom Pod. I'm your host, Austin Marie. And if you are raising a neurodivergent child, or honestly, if you're in the middle of reparenting yourself while also trying to raise tiny humans at the same time, this episode is going to feel like a deep exhale. Because today we're getting into something that I know so many of us have felt, but maybe didn't always have the language for. And that's the difference between a child who won't and a child who can't. So many of us were raised in environments where behavior was treated as a choice, where compliance was the goal, and where disconnection was often mistaken for discipline. And now we're here, trying to do things differently, while also navigating our own nervous systems, our own triggers, and honestly, our own conditioning. And that's why I'm so excited for today's conversation. I'm joined by Stacey Curnow, who is an AuDHDer, a family therapist, and the founder of Asheville Family Counseling. She specializes in helping parents move out of those exhausting power struggles and into real partnership with their kids using Dr. Ross Greene's collaborative and proactive solutions framework. Her work is deeply rooted in understanding what's actually getting in the way for both kids and parents, so that instead of constant conflict, we can start building connection, trust, and nervous system safety inside our homes. And if you've ever found yourself in that moment where your child is suddenly completely overwhelmed, and then suddenly you're overwhelmed, like literally this morning, and now everything is spiraling, this conversation is going to give you language, tools, and honestly, a lot of validation. So let's get into it. Hi, good morning, Stacey. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, why don't you, for the listeners who don't know who you are yet, why don't you go ahead and give us a little introduction?
Well, I heard that intro. It was fantastic. Thank you so much. And I think where I want to really jump off is talking about how I've learned both personally as a mom to a neurospicy kid, being an AuDHDer myself, and professionally that when we look at concerning behavior, often what's called defiant behavior, through the lens of a nervous system and overwhelm, everything changes. And so I'm really working hard to get across this message that it's not defiance. Let's stop focusing on the concerning behavior because it's really the dysregulation that's driving all of that. And so when we can get curious about what's causing the dysregulation, everything changes.
Literally everything changes.
Mhm.
And once you hit that point where you've learned enough about the nervous system, you've learned enough about regulation, it's I don't know how else to explain it except for it's like you've put on glasses and you
Yes.
just see the world differently where it's like you said, it's not defiance, it's oh, this child is severely dysregulated. It
Yes.
changes
Yes.
the way you see everything.
It does, and I love that you mentioned it's like putting on a pair of glasses, and again, I lean heavily into Dr. Ross Greene's collaborative and proactive solutions model, and he actually says that one of the most important first steps is to adopt what he calls the lens shift, right? Putting on these glasses. So you were already, yeah, like working with this new way of framing it. And it's so great because it's so intuitive in that way, and I've had so many parents when I've worked with them that they've been like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot that the glasses were on top of my head," and I was like, "Where are the glasses?" I can't find them even though they're right on top of my head and, that they slip or they get smudged, and so if we can remember like, "Oh, yeah, let me put back on my glasses," because just like you said, we were not raised this way at all.
No.
Again, it was very much about, um, following these, I mean, guidelines, these as you said, like, we had these expectations of us from our parents, and it was very clear, like, you meet the expectations, and again, like, punishments and rewards were used in order to shape behavior
Yes.
instead of really understanding what was getting in the way of getting that desirable outcome. So I'm so glad we've come so far, and again, no, um no shade to our parents. They did the best they could with understanding the nervous system, the culture that
Mhm.
they had to work with. But I'm so grateful that we are changing that narrative right now. And again,
Yeah.
such props to you for really getting on a platform and talking about it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that because it's almost like at all at once, it seems so basic and yeah, of course, this makes so much sense. But we have been so conditioned and so stripped away from our own ability to respect our nervous system,
Mhm.
to identify what's happening in our nervous system because like you said, this is kind of new. Even though we're getting back to this very basic connection between a parent, a caregiver and their child and attuning our nervous systems to be able to co-regulate with each other, which is very like that's nature at its
Yes.
baseline. But we've
Mhm.
been kind of ripped apart from that part of
Mhm.
us and
Mhm.
instead we were conditioned for the product. We don't care
Mhm.
about the journey, it's the
Mhm.
end result. We don't care
Mhm.
how you got to that end result if you were so uncomfortable and you were stressed out and everything felt wrong and you had anxiety. If you did it, that's all that matters. Whereas now it's like there's this shift where it's like, no, the journey matters. Like the actually like the comfort of my child during the day matters more than just whether or not he was just sitting still. And
Mhm.
it's a very different way to pursue parenting or pursue teaching. But it feels funny that it's like we're only now talking about this. Like we're only now recognizing like, we should probably center child nervous system safety.
Mhm.
That there's, you know, like this is probably not a good thing that so many people are walking around dysregulated, not aware of
Mhm.
how dysregulated they are. And so yeah, I'm noticing it's becoming more common, but, you know, I'm in a smaller area and I sound like a lunatic. No one
Mhm.
takes I felt like I was driven out of my classroom because people were so annoyed that I would just not like shut up and do the curriculum. I even was told to my face, "Why does it matter so much to you if kids are diagnosed?" And
Mhm.
that sentence at that time, I was not in a calm enough place to not be offended, but it shows the lack of understanding of how important it is for people and children to know their own brain and how their brains work.
When you said, "Yeah, why is this so hard?" And one of the ways I frame it is simple, but it's not easy because we really are bucking up against a culture that is starting to move towards a more connected framework of understanding ourselves and our children. But right now, we're still in the thick of it for sure. And so that's why you got so much pushback. That's why I still get even people who come to me, parents who come to me and know what they're doing and what the schools are doing isn't working, they're still bucking up against it. And so I just have so much compassion because again, when you said, why is it so hard to center our child's nervous system? You also answered it by saying we're also so disconnected from our own nervous system and understanding it better and how to bring calm and regulation to it. So it's really just so hard. So again, that's why I have
Mhm.
so much compassion. That's why I really want to take away to be this isn't a thinner thighs in 30 days kind of approach. I mean, it will be years
Mhm.
probably. The great for us as adults to unlearn all of this unhelpful conditioning and then help our children. But the great good news is that if we just keep at it, if we just keep talking to our kids about what's happening with them, what's happening with us, how we're doing our best, how we see there's a gap, and then it's really created by, again, how we were raised, but we want to do it better. Kids are so, I mean, again, human beings, I think, are innately compassionate. And so they care.
Mhm.
And so our kids care that we're also having a hard time, and they're much more forgiving of us than we are of ourselves. And
Mhm.
so when we can, again, start to lean into that relationship, they'll show us. I mean, again, it was when my child was 4 that he started saying, "Hey, that doesn't feel good."
Mm.
Literally said, I'll never forget when he said to me, "Hey, mommy, that doesn't feel good." When I was trying to hustle him out the door, get his shoes on, get your coat, where's your backpack? And he just said, "Hey, that doesn't feel good." And I remember thinking, literally thinking, "I don't care," right?
Yeah.
Like, we need to get out the door. You have to be at right. So, and you hear me getting activated, just already
Well,
going back
because
there.
like you
Yeah.
said, we are bucking up a
Yes.
system, like a way of
Yes.
being, and unfortunately, what I have found is the only way that I was able to lean into this way of being, of centering their nervous system regulation is because I had the privilege of stepping out of society. I had a provider who saw that I was on the brink of, and I had a full autism burnout, unable to function. And she saw that and respected it and honored it and put me on disability. So I had a job that I had insurance that I could be put on disability and have a nervous system collapse. And that was 4 years ago. I'm still struggling. I live on the outskirts of society because it is too stressful for me to enter the hustle and bustle of the, "We gotta go, we have to do this," like, you have to slow it down, and that's, like, the first step to unplugging from that system, and you're gonna be people are gonna be annoyed with you. People were annoyed and still are that when my children are overwhelmed and having school refusal, I honor that. "Okay, we'll have a rest day," and that's okay, and it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean they're gonna grow up to be failures. Like, we have to honor the resting and the slowing down because, like you said, your child feels like, there is nothing more stressful than hustling and bustling and being, we gotta go," because we're connected. Actually, when I'm really upset, I was upsetting my child because his nervous system is designed to align to mine. So I am actually dysregulating my child if I am in a dysregulated state. And so it blows my mind that we're not taught this very basic information about ourselves. How can we be a good parent if I don't understand that I have to get myself aligned and calm to be able to calm this child in front of me.
Yeah, and again, you spoke to it. It was a privilege. It was such a gift that you were able to take that time off because and most parents I work with, when I bring up that I think we're living in this pressure cooker, I think we have to let some of the pressure off. And that means perhaps investigating, right? Examining our days, kind of doing an energy audit. And do we have, right? The energy, the capacity is what I call it to, again, regulate, co regulate, um, have the collaborative conversations to solve these problems together so we don't have those explosive behaviors, those
Mhm.
concerning behaviors. And again, 9 times out of 10, parents say, "I can't," and I still wanna offer them hope that we can still turn the ship around. Again, it will just be a very long journey.
Journey.
But as
Yeah.
you said, I mean, it's all about the journey. So even when I have parents who come to me when their kids are like 16 and they're like, "We've got 2 years, where they're still captive and we can do this." I'm like, "No, no, no. This is a long game, right? As
Yeah.
long as they're your children, as long as you're their parents,
Yeah.
you can keep working on this." And again, the repairs that you can do in the moment, whether your child is 4 or 14 or 40, because I work with a lot of adult parents of adult children that are trying to repair the ruptures in their relationship that were created when the child was 4 or 14 years old. And so I say it's never too late. And again, as long as we're noticing, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for us to be in this together, is what I say. So again, as soon as we can start kind of sharing these principles, these guidelines with our kids, they love it. They love having a say in the decisions that are impacting their lives. And so as soon as we give them, that framework, like, hey, you're going to be included in making the decisions that impact your life, they love it. And when we don't do that, they'll straight up say, hey, as my son said, let's do the solutions thing. So as soon as I introduced him to it, again, he was like 10, 4 at 4, when I was like, "Oh my gosh, nothing is more important than my connection with my child, not hustling him out the door." And so I tried to course correct as best as I could by slowing things down, by giving him more choices, but I didn't get this collaborative problem-solving framework until I learned about Dr. Ross Greene's CPS model when he was 10. But again, as soon as I introduced it, he just like, glommed
Yeah.
onto it because
Yeah.
he was like, "Yes, this is it." And so now he's 21. And again, it's been this through line that he will say to me, "Hey, mom, let's do the solutions thing together." And
Yeah.
he'll even do it now when he sees me get dysregulated because, again, he hasn't been forced as far away as I have to not honoring
Yeah.
my own capacity. And so he can even see it sooner than I do and call me back. So it's the most beautiful thing when we can form this partnership with our children because, again, they will be the mirror for you of like, let's do it
Yeah.
differently. And this is how.
And it really is a different lifestyle. And that's what and it kind of it unfolds naturally, I have found. My shift was a very explosive, clear cut, like, oh, nervous system burnout. There's a before and there's an after. But the it was the previous 4 years of me teaching TK, of me doing daily affirmations, of me of modeling, there's so much modeling of what it looks like to honor and hold space for big feelings while also holding boundaries. And the doing it every day, all of the rest of the fluff that we think is important for children to be successful kind of goes to the wayside because you notice that the success comes with the regulated child. Because once the child is stable and regulated and feels respected as a full human, we don't treat children as like full, complete humans. But when they get that respect, even at TK, even at 4 and 5, they have the ability to co-regulate each other, to be able to recognize, like, I don't feel like you're asking me in a polite way. Like 4-year-olds, if you show them what it feels like to experience nervous system safety and consideration and respect, they'll know what that baseline is. And moving forward, they'll be able to hopefully, if fostered, advocate for themselves. And
I've really seen that. I mean, again, I get the benefit. I know probably many of your listeners have younger kids, but again, my kid is now 21, and so I can absolutely attest to that. When you're saying that's the hope that they will know themselves really well, they will know their capacity, they will be able to advocate for themselves and their capacity. I see it all the time. And so it is like, yes, seeds I planted 10, 15 years ago are blossoming into these beautiful fruits. So again, I really want to highlight it is a long game, right? For someone to say, I can't do 10 years of these, explosions and
yeah, well,
and
no, you
and
know
dealing
what?
with the schools,
It's a
you know?
long game for the parents. I feel
Yes,
like it's a
yes.
very humbling experience because like, my kids correct me. My kids will bring up, like, "You're raising your voice to me right now," like, "You don't get" and they will check me. Well, I'll be like, "You are right. I'm gonna go calm myself down. I'll be right back." And it really is not you can see that what we're having to do is decondition ourselves, is to strip away all of the things that we thought were right. Whereas children, they are naturally attuned to themselves. They haven't been ripped away from their ability to be connected to their body. And so it's much easier for them. It's really the adults who need to it's you're having to have this completely different perspective. Like, I actually I'm okay with living in poverty and doing that so that I can be available and rested to support a child who needs a lot of regulation. Those are choices that you have to make to live this kind of way that is, again, a privilege, and that's just not what our society values. We don't look at, people around me don't look at me and I'm like, "Wow, I can't believe that she left a career as a teacher to clean houses so that she can regulate her youngest child." Like, I look irresponsible. We value money. We value new cars. Like, people don't respect people who are like, "I'm thrifting everything. I'm not buying new." It is a system that it is not at all
Mm-mm.
supported.
No, not designed to support the
Mhm.
nervous system, not the adults, not the child, and it is incredibly courageous to step outside of that model that we were given and saying, that's not serving me, that's not serving my
Yeah.
kids, and I'm going to create something else, even when other people don't understand it, and in fact, kind of dismiss and disrespect it. I have some feelings about the poverty, right? That I'm just your podcast will continue and will bring in massive sources of revenue, your own book deal. So I'm so glad you're doing what's called I've heard it's called document, right? Like, you're documenting this new way of being. I have no doubt about this, and it may feel like right now the income isn't matching, where it will be, but I see you documenting it, that you can step out of this rat race culture, create something really special while honoring your nervous system, your children's nervous systems. Like, thank goodness that you're out here showing us that there is a different way. And it's great to say, like, right now, we don't go on vacations. Right now, we're living below the poverty line. And I hope everyone else is seeing this,
Yeah,
that it's not
and
always going to
all
be this way.
yeah, and also it's worth it. And
Ye-
also I value my peace and my
yes.
children are
Yes.
thriving. You know, like
Yeah.
what we think we need, like
Yeah.
obviously there's so much stress with food insecurity and
Mhm,
rent insecurity and making that
mhm,
bottom line. That's
mhm,
inherently stressful.
mhm,
But when you are able to center nervous system safety and create a
mhm,
safe environment, you have to do that under any
mhm.
circumstance, you know? And there
Yes.
there are the sad reality that there are neurodivergents. A lot of us live in poverty,
Mhm,
and that is not discussed. That is
mhm,
not, we're not seen. No one,
mhm.
we don't see what that looks like. And I think that for me, it's always been like, let's shine a light on the actual
Yes.
problem. My
Yes.
being in poverty as a single
Mhm,
neurodivergent mom,
mhm,
I don't hold shame with that.
mm.
That's the
I'm
system
so
that should feel
glad.
ashamed,
Absolutely.
you
Oh
know,
my gosh. And
but it
again,
it is that shift of, like, stop putting the light on me, this is not an
mhm.
individual failure,
No.
shift your light up and look at the
Yes.
systems in place,
Yes, you're
and
showing us that. It's so powerful.
well,
Yeah, I just feel chills because I'm
I
like, "Yes, you're
I
doing
just
it."
feel lucky that I get to have experts like you come on because
Mm,
although I'm living it, I am not the expert, and so I'm like,
mhm,
"Yes, come on and share the light," because once everyone has that glasses moment, it's
mhm.
gonna change everything. Everything's
Yes,
gonna
it really
change.
does, it really does, and again, I would buck up a little bit against the expert. I do see you as an expert. You are the expert of your own experience, your kids' experience. Clearly, you've created a platform that is helping so many other families, so again, I'm gonna let you wear that crown, queen,
I
and
appreciate
then
that.
but
Thank
thank
you.
you. I don't mind also saying, "Hey, I have worked really hard at," again, personally and professionally,
Mhm.
to build a framework of understanding that now I feel very passionately about offering other people, because the framework, again, is very simple but not easy, because again,
Yeah.
it bucks up against everything that we learned growing up and everything that's still, yeah, pressuring us in our society.
I understand, like, the ideals and the morals
Mhm,
behind what you're teaching, but I don't
mhm,
actually know about the collaborative and proactive
mhm,
solutions. I've
mhm,
never learned about that. So anyone
mhm,
else who is hearing this for the first time, what is it and how
mhm,
is it different from the
mhm.
way that most of us were raised?
So it's, I think, a complete 180 from the way that we were raised, because it is one of the highlights of it is that you do not focus on the behavior. So again, if we think about the way we were raised, we think about how kids are treated in schools or on their jobs, right? Like, it's, hey, you're not doing what we expected you to do. And so now, again, you're going to get punished if you don't. And then this idea that, but if we make it really attractive, maybe they'll be more willing to do it, right? That's like giving the kids the stickers, the whatever they give for the rewards. And of course, in society, it's like you do what we expect and you'll get paid well, right? You'll get the office in the corner of the building. So again, that's not hard to accept, that, yeah, of course, it's about the behavior. We focus on the behavior. We do everything we can to shape the behavior by focusing on the behavior. So what CPS does come, and it has an unfortunate acronym, right? But I am going to often call it by that. So the CPS stands for the Collaborative and Proactive Solutions Model. So you already hear everything that you need to know in the name, just has an unfortunate acronym. And so the very first thing, as we talked about, was the lens shift. And the lens shift is based on this simple but powerful concept, which is so it's like kids do well if they can, right? Not when. We have this idea that, especially when kids can sometimes do well, right? Can sometimes complete their math homework, can sometimes put their shoes on, without assistance. We have this idea that they should always be able to do that. But the lens shift really starts with this idea that kids do well if they can. And if they can't, it's not a problem of motivation or caring or somehow wanting to ruin their mom's day, just wanting to really put a wrench in the works. It's because they can't. Something is getting in the way. So when we get curious and we don't keep focusing on the behavior, like, hey, buddy, you have to get on your shoes. I've told you 3 times now, get on your shoes, right? Which is again that moment of conflict that I was in with my son. It becomes, I wonder what's making it hard for him to put on his shoes. Yeah. And so when we get curious about that, again, hopefully, as we build this collaborative framework with our children, it could be just as simple as in the moment saying, hey, I'm noticing you're having difficulty putting on your shoes. What's up? Right. And then they could say, right, that one, my shoes are too tight, or, I remembered I found a bug in my shoe early in the day, so I don't want to put it on, or, right, like I'm busy doing something else. Right? Something else is more important to me in this moment than putting on my shoes. And I don't really want to go right to the doctor's, the store, school. Right. So again, there's always a reason. And so we want to get very curious and really switch the framework from, what I say is won't is actually can't. So
I
again, in
love
our
that.
mind, we're thinking they won't put on their shoes, right? They won't do their homework. They won't put away their iPad, right? They won't stop playing online. Yeah, but it's really like we need to start thinking about they can't. Something is getting in the way.
Yeah.
So, first of all, that's the lens shift is that kids do well if they can. And if they're not, something's getting in the way. And then we want to get what makes it really proactive. Because again, so often I get from parents that the behavior, the concerning behavior, the defiant behavior, the shutdown behavior is so unpredictable. It seems to come out of the blue. And when we really start looking at it from the CPS framework, everything is predictable because what we look at are skills. And we think that the difficulty in meeting an expectation, let's even say you know, uh, getting out the door by 8 a.m. to get on the school bus, that there is some skill that is still developing. They used to say lagging skill, but then they got the feedback from really the neurodivergent community that they really said, like, we're all lagging skills, right?
Yeah.
Like, even, like adults can't
Yeah.
always do everything perfectly all the time, right? So let's lose that descriptor of lagging skills and let's just talk about skills. And that sometimes we don't have the capacity to, or the guidance or the practice in doing the skill so that it's reliable all the time. So we're looking at like 18 different skills that often get in the way, right? When we can't access them reliably. And that's everything from the skill of emotional regulation, of transitioning, of taking on other people's perspective, of staying with a difficult activity, right? Those are all skills that, I mean, again, I'm thinking about all those, like, I still have trouble with it. Like, again,
Yeah.
there are days when it's hard for me
Sometimes,
to stay
yes.
with a
Yeah.
difficult activity. It's difficult for me to transition off my iPad to getting ready for bed,
Yeah.
right? Like, that
Oh,
we've
yeah.
all had those difficulties. And so when we start looking at, oh, yeah, it's reliably hard, right? It's predictable that my kid's going to have trouble with transitions, trouble regulating their emotions, especially
Mhm.
when they're doing something hard,
Mhm.
right? It's difficult for them to take on my perspective, right? That's the empathy piece.
And sometimes it's not even developmentally appropriate yet,
Yeah. Thank you,
you
because
know?
that's huge, because then that gets us to think about, okay, is the expectation that I have for my child that they're gonna be able to do, a math packet, right? Like 4 sheets of math problems, is that actually realistic? Meaning, can they actually do it? Have they shown me that they can do it? And if they can't, then we need to remove the expectation that they're going to be doing 4 math worksheets a night, right? We would remove it and we would talk to the teacher and say, this isn't realistic that he's going to be able to do it. I'll never forget working with a family about that. We asked the kid what was hard about them completing the math worksheet. And it was like where they had 2 rows of like 4 sets of problems. So 8 on the same page. And he's like, I look at those 8 problems and I just feel overwhelmed. I can't do it. And the workaround was writing each math problem on an index card. So he had 8 index cards. He didn't mind, like if it was just one discrete problem at a time. So again, the other principle that's really key in this framework is called ask the kid.
Mm.
Right. So we're not thinking, oh, they don't know how to do math yet. Right. What most kids are thinking when they look at a math worksheet that they can't complete, they're thinking, oh, I'm stupid. I'm lazy. There's something wrong with me. But if you were actually to just look at it as like a sensory processing issue and you feel shut down in the face of this complexity, let's break it down more simply. So that's what came out about Ask the Kid. We weren't assuming, we didn't so often adults have theories, right? And they're very well meaning, like, oh, this must be hard for them, or they don't want to do it because they want to, they prefer being on their iPad. We have all these theories, but we don't ask the kid about what's hard.
And that's also aligns with staying curious. Being curious,
Yes.
not assuming like,
Yes.
"Oh, I know
Yes.
best because I am
Yes.
bigger." And I think that what I hear when you're explaining this is that it gives the context. We just look at children as a behavior. What are they doing in
Uh-huh.
this current moment
Mhm.
without appreciating the context? Like, yeah, what is it making it hard for my kid to get out the door today?
Mhm.
He has a stuffy nose, he didn't sleep well, he didn't eat,
Yes.
like, but we
Yes.
we just like kind of ignore that,
We
that
do.
we're like that even as adults, like I don't function differently before I have my
Right.
coffee. We expect
Yes.
perfectionism out of
Yes.
children. Like, I said
Yes.
this, stop what you're doing right now, shift your
Yeah.
focus, transition immediately. There's
Yes.
there's just this lack of understanding of what is developmentally appropriate and what is realistic to expect from children and also from for ourselves. Like if you are neurodivergent, and I shared with you, I've really been struggling with procrastination lately and just feeling this sense of paralysis. And it used to be viewed like children view it, it's all like, I'm bad. I'm so stupid. I don't know how to do this. I'm self sabotaging. But when you have that information, it shifts and the story changes to where it's not like my child is bad. My child doesn't listen. I'm so lazy to oof, I really see that their neurodivergence is stepping in front of their ability. Like, oh, transitions are hard for them. So now I set up a 5-minute warning, a 3-minute warning, and a 1-minute warning. It gives you, like you said, those solutions to how can we set you up because we're not always going to be at full capacity to max out every skill every single day. Like we have energy changes, sometimes I have the capacity, sometimes we don't.
Absolutely, because you said, I mean, it's not always neurodivergence. It's that you had a cold. It's that you didn't sleep well. It was that,
Yeah.
right? So again, we need to get, I call it like stress detectives, because any concerning behavior, again, everyone knows what I mean by concerning behavior, whether it's, not getting their shoes on, not getting out the door, not putting away their iPad, not helping set the table. It's because something was getting in the way, and we have to, like you said, get curious. So that concerning behavior is what I call a stress response. And so I want to get curious about what caused the stress in the first place. In the CPS model, we see it's the difficulty meeting the expectation that's creating the stress response. So we want to be curious again, what got in the way, and again, not have these preconceived notions, because again, it's all about the context. That one day it could be the ADHD, a next day it could be about the sniffles, the next day it could be about, this kid that said something to them on the playground and now they're worried about seeing them in school the next day. So we just really want to, as you said, I think that word curiosity is
Mhm.
huge.
Yeah.
And we really want to have the, again, what I call the generous assumption.
Mm.
It's not just that they're trying to, ruin my day, or they're
Yeah.
just, being manipulative or lazy. It really is that, oh my gosh, they would do well if they could. What's getting in the
Yeah.
way? How can I understand better? And I will just say, because as soon as I hear a parent, I just can't help it. When you said, I try to make transitions easier by creating, the 5-minute chime, the 3-minute chime, the 1-minute chime. And I would say that's great. Again, we do that for our kids, right? We did that from their earliest infancy, right? They couldn't tell us what was hard, but we extrapolated, right? We intuited like, oh, they're crying. I wonder if they're hungry. I wonder if they're wet. I wonder if they're tired, right? And we make accommodations for them. So I think it is a great idea to, of course, just like we did when they were babies, we can still extrapolate and try to create these conditions for them to be more comfortable, and then to notice, like, are the chimes actually helping? And if they don't, right, that would just be, again, we would get curious, like, oh, the chimes seem to be helping before, they don't seem to be helping today. I
Mhm.
wonder what's getting in the way, right? And then
Yes.
talk to the kid about that. Because even, I mean, I've done this CPS model with 3-year-olds. And again, it
Yeah.
depends on their capacity for language and, insights, but there are even ways to do it with very young kids
Oh,
with,
yeah.
by making guesses,
Yeah.
right? Like, do you think it's hard for you because X? And then, I do like a thumbs up, thumbs down, or a 5-finger, like more or less, or, they can point to yes or no on the sticky pads. I mean, there are just so many ways that we can get really great information, even from very young kids, or even kids that, we say they won't talk to us, or they always say, I don't know. And I really think all of that is, again, when I hear the "I don't know," I hear the, uh,
He
right,
doesn't have access to that.
because they haven't been, again, the modeling
Mhm.
of what's getting in the way from their parents, but also it gets back to the connection. And I think there's a lack of trust that they're gonna believe me, or that it matters, or
Mhm.
that they're actually gonna help me solve this problem, because they haven't before. And
Yeah.
so a lot of repair has to be done around, I generally encourage parents to say something like, "Hey, I haven't been really happy with the way our communication has been going, or the way we've been trying to solve problems together. I'd really like to do it differently now.
Yeah.
And here's what I'd like. I'd like to really," so to get back to the framework is, to even to say to the kid, like, I'm going to really try not to force you to do anything. Again, like,
Yeah.
if it's difficult for you to put on your shoes, I'm not going to keep talking about putting on the shoes,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
We're just gonna release the expectation, remove it altogether that you can't put on the shoes, and then if we can problem solve it in the moment, great, but it's usually not the best time in the moment, because 'cause they're
Yeah.
already feeling dysregulated and probably, feeling bad and ashamed, and so it's like, "Hey, we'll just talk about it later, but for now, you don't have to put on your shoes, buddy," right?
Because
So that would be the
yeah,
first thing.
because like, what you're saying, even with those young kids, the reason why it works is because when you're staying in that curious state, what you're really doing is attunement. You are
Yeah,
attuning yourself to the child, and you're, troubleshooting it, and I think that with children, just like as adults, like, it matters when someone comes and is
yes,
asking you, "What do you
yes,
need?" Like, "I'm
yes,
here for you," even if it's
yes,
just sitting with you. That
yes,
matters, and again, like you said, when kids answer like, "I don't know," not getting frustrated that they're not, like, complying with your ability to regulate them, but understanding, like, "Oh, they're so dysregulated, they lost access to their frontal cortex. They can't even access their understanding right now." Or, like myself, as a neurodivergent, I actually don't know what I feel at the moment. It's gonna take me a couple days to process
yes,
what I'm feeling right now.
yes,
I just know I feel bad. And that's
yes,
okay too, to honor the, like, and when you're with those little kids, it's such a fruitful time to give them the language. Like,
for
"Oof, I
sure.
see your eyebrows are connected and you look
Yes.
sad." Like, we
Yes.
need to label those feelings for
Yes.
children because we're not
Yes.
just born with the understanding of like, "This
Yes.
feels like anxiety." You know?
Yes. No, not at all. I mean, again, that's something that we're relearning with my husband. I'll notice when we're having kind of it's starting to get to be a heated conversation, his hands will be on the table, and they'll just naturally start to move into fists. And
Yeah.
he is, I mean, he'll take a bug outside, like he's the most gentle human being on the planet, but it's his nervous system. Like when he
Mhm.
starts to feel stressed, a part of him is mobilizing for
Yeah.
fight.
And the
And
first
so
step of regulating it is acknowledging it.
Noticing it,
Yeah,
noticing it. But he won't again, he's getting better now, but initially I had to say, "Hey, I'm noticing that your hands are forming fists. Are you feeling
when do we
stressed?"
teach it ourselves this? You know, like,
Never,
it's so
never.
wild to me, like, people devalue teaching, especially the younger grades, like,
Yes.
my own
Yes.
ex-husband would like, "Oh, it's so stressful to be
Yeah.
NTK coloring," and it's like,
Mhm.
"No, I'm regulating 24
Oh my
children all
goodness.
day long," and a big part of that is to explicitly teach kids, like, "When we are upset, it looks like this, it feels tight. When we get mad," because it's hard to know how you feel in the moment, so let's show them what it looks like. Let's show them what it feels like, and adults don't know because when was
No.
that lesson?
No, we were never taught it. So again, it's also hard for us to catch it in our kids early enough
Yes.
because I have now been working with so many families where again they say the behavior is completely unpredictable. It goes from 0 to 60. It comes out of nowhere. I never know what to expect. And I've spent time with these kids and I'm like, these kids always, like all vertebrates, all
Yeah.
creatures with a nervous system have early signs of dysregulation.
Yes.
And again, it will be for me, thinking about this one child, the tells are so when you look for them, first, he won't make eye contact, then he gets, like, smaller in a
Oh,
ball, then he'll growl, and then he'll he will
and
push
we're
something, throw a
yeah,
fist, but
and we're
there were
not connecting that that's communication. Though
Exactly, but
everything
there
he
were
was
3 clear communications,
yeah.
the not making eye contact, the making himself smaller, the growling, all saying, "I don't feel safe. This is too
Mhm.
much," right? "Please stop," right? The all communicating very clearly, but the adults in his life, the parents, the teachers, even me, like, it took me, like, a couple of, like, explosive behaviors before I was like, "Pay attention, like, I had to even again, a trained professional. So this is why, again, I'm talking about being the long game, that parents, teachers, caregivers, please have so much patience and generosity and passion for yourself. Because again, why this is hard is because nobody ever modeled it for us. So again, as we're learning this, we're going to be so kind and patient and never lose sight of the fact that our kids are communicating with us and we need to get better about listening to that communication,
Yeah,
even when
yeah.
we never learned it from our earliest childhood.
My anthem as a teacher, especially when I would get new student teachers, is that all behavior is communication. All
Yes.
behavior is communication.
Yes.
We need to stop judging communication as good
Mhm.
or bad. We need to
Yes.
start looking at it as what is this child's nervous system telling us? And
Mhm.
it's like you said, like you're saying, like even for me as a trained profession, like it's hard to pick up on it. And that is because we are learning a new language. We
Yes.
have stopped connecting to the fact that 80% of communication is nonverbal, but we only respect it when a child is like, "I don't like it when you do that, please stop." But they've been telling you that with their body for an hour, you're not listening. But if you're busy, if you're on a schedule, you're not unplugged to look and listen. And that's a hard new language to learn. But but your child is on that journey with you. So if you're learning how to read and attune to your child's nervous system safety, you're also co-regulating and attuning your child to itself, which will again carry with it for the rest of its life. If that child gets in, I mean, my hope is that my children will never find themselves in a narcissistic relationship like I was because they won't allow themselves to betray their own safety. It is a hard skill, but it is a skill that will like forever protect your children.
Yes, yes, and that is absolutely and again, it's true. I've seen it with my now 21-year-old son that he has, fallen for gorgeous women who were also, like, very problematic, and it did not like, he could say, "Hey,
Mhm.
it doesn't feel good when, you're online with these other dudes," and
Yeah.
that's cool, like, I'm not gonna control you, but I'm just not gonna be in a relationship with
Yeah.
someone who's, texting other dudes, and
Yeah.
it was so cool and respectful. So again, he's noticing, "Hey, this doesn't feel good," and I have a boundary around it, not around controlling your behavior, but what I will and will not accept in a relationship, so I
Yes.
leave. right? It was so
Yes.
cool. He's
Well,
already doing it, so
I mean, I'm so because my kids are still little, so I'm still planting the seeds right now, but I mean, even with my oldest who is, he's in 3rd grade, what also this does, it not only protects them to be like, "Oof, I don't like the way that this relationship is feeling. You do you, but I don't like it doesn't feel good." It also makes everything less personal. So my oldest, he's very sensitive to tones. He hates getting corrections and stuff. He's very sensitive to that. And he used to make it all, "I'm so bad. I just can't stop talking. I can't stop fidgeting." Like, "I'm terrible. I'm a terrible student." Whereas now I have noticed he's able to put that space and say like, "Oh, we had a substitute teacher and she was so mad and she was yelling," and I'm expecting him to take it on. And then he said, "I think she was having a really hard day." And I was just
Yes,
like, "Yes,
yes,
it's not about
yes.
you." Like
That's so
when you have this nervous system awareness, you are able to look at other people in distress and instead of being like, "Oh my god, they hate me. I'm so bad."
mhm.
You're curious about it and being like, "Man, I
Yes.
wonder what that person's going through."
Right, they must be having a hard day. That is so beautiful, and that's another key line from the CPS model is they're not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. So again, when we can look at our kids as they're not trying to ruin our day, they're not trying to make things
Yes.
more difficult, they're having a hard time, and then when we give them that grace, again, they give it to you, they give it to their teachers, they give it, right, to their
Yes.
friends. Like, "You must
Yes.
be really having a hard day for you to say
Yes.
that to me, for you to do that." And, right, please take care of yourself. I'm gonna take care of myself over here, right? And then we don't
Yeah.
allow, right, for that codependence, that enmeshment to happen that, again, is our legacy, right? That's what
Yes.
you were describing, that's what I learned, that it was okay to tolerate, when people were constantly undermining me, constantly, like, presenting their view of the world as the better, the right
It felt
one. So,
normal.
yeah.
That's how it's always been. Always through
Yes.
school,
Yes.
like, we have
Yes.
normalized this feeling of having our boundaries walked all over, of being
Yes.
uncomfortable at the
Yes.
expense to allow other people to have comfort around us.
Yes,
And so it
yes. Yeah,
feels selfish
yeah.
to center yourself and being like, "Actually, I don't have to make myself feel uncomfortable.
No.
Actually, my
Yeah.
children don't have to struggle. Sorry." Like,
Yes. Yes,
actually.
it's so beautiful, and again, we've had to unlearn that where we prioritize other people's needs or if they seem more adamant or more the authority that we toe the line.
Yeah.
No, we're giving our kids a completely different operating
Yeah,
system, and
and
it's
and,
so
like,
exciting.
I mean, honestly, I can't take credit that it was like, I'm doing this on my own. It was really that my youngest could not and would not he does not have the, capacity to blow
Mm,
past his own discomfort.
yes.
He's,
Yes.
um I personally think that he does have PDA,
Mhm.
but,
Okay.
you can also say it's ADHD resistance,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
whichever one it is, there really was nothing that I could do to push him past
No.
this dysregulation to
Mhm.
mask up.
Yes.
With
Yep.
my oldest and myself, we hate being upsetting other people and being
Mhm.
corrected enough
Mhm.
to kind of correct ourselves. Whereas
Yes.
my youngest, he does not
Can't.
care about
Mhm.
that. He's so in tune with his own
Yes.
body that
Yes.
he cannot push through his own sensitivities and discomfort.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
how does CPS specifically
Mhm.
support kids with PDA or a
Yes.
more rigid nervous systems where
Yes.
every demand does feel like a threat?
Yes. And so again, I would call it sensitive, right? Rather than
Deeply
it is, yeah, just
sensitive.
deeply sensitive. And again, that's a beautiful thing. And we see how that again, I'm getting to be more and more like I wish more people, right, were PDA that they couldn't that it would become again, not a won't, right?
Yeah,
Like subjugate my own needs, my own feeling of safety for others, right? But it's a can't.
it's a
Yeah. So again,
cannot.
that gets back to our earliest framework where it's not that, your oldest will and your youngest won't. You said it so clearly. And I really want people to take this away that it is a can't. And so
Mhm.
for what we're seeing as a PDA profile is that it is a nervous system reaction to a sense of overwhelm. And again, how we are framing that overwhelm as the nervous system is perceiving a threat. And that threat, if we think about the acronym again, an unfortunate acronym, when I told my son that I thought that he had PDA, he was like, public displays of affection, you know? And so I'm like, "Okay, yeah, there's a little bit of we've gotta
I
stop
don't
using the same acronyms
I
for
don't like the
different
name
things."
either because
Mhm.
pathological demand avoidance,
It's
it all
awful.
I feel like it also implies a consciousness to it. Like,
Yes,
I
yes.
am
Right,
avoiding this demand because I don't
right.
want to, when
Yes.
really it's a
Yeah.
loss of autonomy.
Oh
You
my
know,
gosh,
like,
and it's
that's
pathological? Like, it's
y
diseased? That is it's
yeah.
so messed up. So at Asheville Family Counseling, my practice, we deliberately call it and we didn't come up with this, but it's the persistent desire for autonomy.
I
Is
like
so
that so much
that's how
better.
we're because that
I'm
really
gonna write
gets to
that
the
down.
root of it. Yeah,
Can you say that again?
persistent desire for autonomy. Because when you think about, again, okay, if we're saying that it's nervous system overwhelm and the overwhelm is coming from perceiving a threat, then what is being threatened? And if you think about it, it's their autonomy. And
Mhm.
again, any human being, right? We have really two drives as I understand human behavior, but again, it may be for all primates, I think, is a drive for autonomy. That means having a say, right? Some control over what happens to us. That makes sense for every human being. And like you said earlier, we have this idea that little kids aren't humans and that they don't have the same drives and needs, but the need for autonomy and the need for connection, right? But it can be a real push pull as far as the need for autonomy and the need for connection. And the really unfortunate thing is that, again, a nervous system will decide autonomy, like no connection. Those are the kids who isolate in their rooms. I work with so many families of teenagers who are like these 17, 18, 19-year-olds who are not leaving their rooms because, again, connection feels so unsafe because what they've learned is, right, no one's taking my feelings into account. I'm not being included in the decisions that are impacting my life.
Yeah.
So,
It
no,
doesn't
thank
matter
you,
anyways.
right? It
And
doesn't
we
matter.
and we have to understand that isolation is a trauma response.
It's a
Y
trauma response,
it
is
is
their best attempt to create safety,
yes,
right?
and
But
it's
again,
almost
by
like a note to the caregivers, like, this is actually indication that, like, you broke your connection. Like,
yes,
if
yes,
you have built a safe, connected
yes,
relationship with your child through consistently respecting
yes,
their autonomy,
yes,
then they're gonna know you're a safe person when they're
yes.
5, 10, 16, 20. You know?
20, 40. So for those kids, let's talk about those kids. Because again, how does PDA work? I talked about, with a 3-year-old, again, it's a
Yeah.
lot more like extrapolating, guessing, but again, including them, like with
Yeah.
the thumbs up, thumbs down, does that sound right? But for the 17, 18, 20-year-olds, it gets back to what I was saying earlier, that there is a rupture, that they don't, it's this rupture of trust, that they don't trust that you actually have like their best interest at heart, that you will include them in the decisions, that you are going to help them prioritize their felt sense of safety. So that's where I was saying that very often parents, again, having done their best with the model that was handed down to them, which again, that doesn't work. But again, for the more compliant, like you and I, we made it work until we couldn't, right? Until we got to the burnout and the shutdown. But getting back to those parents, it is really important for them to communicate, "Hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about the way our conversations, our communication, the trust has gone in the past. I really want to change that, right? I really want to take responsibility for having created this rupture, and I really want to repair it." And so, right. And again, for these kids, again, let's really think about that 17, 18-year-old who's isolating in her room. It can come out as a text, right? So I've had parents text that exact thing. Hey, I haven't been happy with it, the way our communication is going. I really like it to do it different. Are you willing, right? Are you open? And then like they'll get no response, right? Because again, it's a no. It's a no. I don't trust you, right? But then it's like these little forays, like, hey, I've been noticing, right? Or hey, I'd like to help in this way. What do you think? Right? Just again,
It's
and
being
with families that I've
available always.
yes, I'm
Available with the
available,
connection.
right? I call it
Yep.
accessible. I'm accessible. I'm responsive. Like you have
And
a need, I'm going to meet it, and engaged, right?
yes.
Meaning that curiosity, like what feels hard to you? How can I
Yeah.
help? So you're really flipping the script now to, again, not about compliance and like here's my expectation and you better meet it, but it's very much like what is feeling hard for you? What can we do together, right? So that I can understand what's difficult and we can solve it together. In a way, right? At the end of the day, we only ever weigh a solution against two criteria. And that is it realistic? Meaning everyone can do it. And that's again where we're thinking about those 3, 4 year olds who it may not even be realistic for them to meet an expectation. But is it realistic and is it mutually satisfactory? Because this is where I offer a different perspective than what we're calling sort of that low demand parenting, right? Like in
Yeah.
the moment, yeah, if there's any kind of overwhelm, shutdown, we need to remove the expectation, but we say like not forever.
Mhm.
Right. So if we were noticing that a child was consistently refusing school, we would for sure say, hey, yeah, I'm not going to push you to go to school. But then in a calm moment, I would be saying, hey, can we talk about what feels hard about school? And then
Mhm.
can we start to try to solve that together?
And
And then, yeah.
sometimes it's even just having that respected. Like, I see
Yes.
that you're isolating in your room, I'm
Hmm.
gonna do that repair, or, like, I see that you've, like, really been not wanting to go to school,
Yes.
and I think my child, I had an SBIT meeting for him, and having to explain to the education system because in parents need to understand that, like, when you send your child to school, your what their measurement is just academics. And then are they throwing chairs across? Is it a behavior problem? Like, are they
Uh-huh.
a serious behavior problem?
Uh-huh.
If you have a child who has PDA
Mhm.
or who just is a little bit more sensitive and rigid, then it's hard to go into a space and be like, we're here because my child is hiding underneath the desk. But what I see is that his needs are not being met this entire
Yes.
time, that he
Yes.
doesn't feel safe. And so
Yes.
what I said is that I don't want him to have a negative association with school in
Hmm.
kindergarten. I'm going to
Yes.
respect his school refusal. I'm
Uh-huh.
not going to force him. And I also don't
Uh-huh.
want the teachers to force him to
Uh-uh.
stay in dysregulation when I
No.
am available to pick him up. And
Mhm.
they were so against it, like, no, you have to keep, we don't want him to think that he can just be upset and not come to school. But that's not always the case. What he saw is that he knows that when he's seriously overwhelmed, his
Mhm.
mom's going to respect that. He can
Yes.
have a day to rest and then he
Mhm.
knows that he can go back. It's like
Yes.
we assume malice and that, like,
Mhm.
if give our kids any kind of like
Mhm.
leverage or
Mhm.
support, that they're going to like give them an inch and they're going to run a mile, when it's like children
Right.
are not deceptive like that. And
No, no,
you
that's
know,
the manipulative piece is what I hear, like, well, they're just going to, again, crawl under the table when they, wanna go home, but again, in that scenario that you're describing and again, the teachers are thinking like, "Oh, yeah, because at home they get their favorite snacks and they get to watch their shows," so they're thinking about, "How do I get those snacks and watch those shows?" But that's not what's happening, so I would
mhm.
be very curious, again, what happened before he climbed
Yes.
under the desk, right? Because there was an expectation that he was having difficulty meeting, again, 2 minutes, 10 minutes before he crawled under the desk. So that's what I would be asking the teacher. Please notice what's happening before he crawls under the desk, because that's what we want to solve for, not
Yes.
just like hoping that he's going to have more capacity the next day to deal whatever frustration, right? Whatever is frustrating him the day before. And that can happen.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it would never be actually solving the problem that was creating, right, that frustration
Yeah,
response
we're
that
here in this meeting to figure out the whole goal is how to keep him from going under the desk. That's not the
yes,
problem. And
yes,
if they would listen, what
yes.
he's actually upset about is that I think he's having auditory processing issues.
Mm,
He's
yes,
feeling the teacher's talking too fast, and then I'm getting
yes,
in trouble for something that I'm supposed to be doing.
yeah,
I don't
yes,
understand. She's talking too fast.
yes,
I don't know. So it's basically like gibberish to him.
yes.
He
Again,
doesn't, and then
sensory
he's getting,
processing issues are
yeah,
huge.
and then he's
Yeah.
getting in trouble, and for rightfully so, that's unfair. This is not
Yeah.
fair. Why am I getting in
Yeah.
trouble for something that I don't even know, And so
Right. I didn't do
there's
anything wrong.
yes, and
Yeah.
instead they see the problem as he went under the desk, and it's like
Yeah.
there's so many problems before that,
Yes.
that this was
Yes.
how far he had to go for you guys to pay attention.
Again, he was saying I bet there were 3, 4 other ways he was communicating this was hard for him.
Yes.
Again, like, not making eye contact with the teacher is probably one because he's like, "I don't understand anything she's saying." And then 2, it was probably, like, again, like, it's almost classic, like, getting smaller because it feels hard,
Yeah.
right? He was probably, like, humming to himself to, like, self-regulate and then right, then go under the desk.
And when you go into these meetings, it's important to bring that information to the teachers and explicitly saying, like, yes, I know my child does not have physical needs. I know my
Mhm,
child does not have academic needs. They're very
mhm,
intelligent. We're humans, though. We have this emotional side to us.
mm,
And he is a very sensitive person who
mhm,
requires more co regulation. He
mhm,
needs a person to de escalate himself
mhm,
back to being able to have access to his language because he
mhm.
goes selectively mute
Mhm.
and
Yes.
or he
Yep,
does repetitive
yep.
things, and it's understanding that, like, being angry, punishing,
Mhm,
giving out consequences, that's
mhm,
not gonna de-escalate, you're
mm-mm,
escalating the
mhm.
situation.
Yep.
Instead, when you see a child who is struggling, if you
Mhm,
stay curious enough and they feel your curiosity,
mhm.
that's going to disengage them out of the emotional
Yes,
part into
yes.
the, like, "Oh, okay, how do I explain this?" And
Mhm,
that will, de-escalate them,
mhm,
and just normalizing that, like, that's supposed to happen. Children are
mhm,
supposed to get dysregulated and then have
mhm,
adults regulate
mhm,
them. That's how our
mhm,
nervous system gets practiced to being
mhm,
able to do it as an adult
mhm,
by yourself, but, like,
mm.
because we judge behaviors, we squash it immediately,
Yes,
and it's not the
yes.
teacher's fault. They
Mm,
have 7,000 things that they need to
yes,
get through the day. They don't
yes,
have the
yes,
time to
yes.
regulate a child.
Well, I mean, I would argue that because, again, it's energy either way.
Mhm.
Dr. Ross Greene, whose model, again, I'm leaning into, just published a book called The Kids Who Aren't Okay. And it's all about the school system.
Yeah.
And his premise is it takes energy to correct the child, to punish the child, to, send them into timeout or the cozy corner or to the principal, and then make up for the learning that was lost during that time. So, again, another one of his lines is choose your hard, right? It's
Oh,
energy either way.
yeah.
And so one solves problems though, and one doesn't, right? One is going to lead to the persistent behavior that's disrupting the class. The
Yeah.
other could keep the child like regulated through the whole class because we're actually solving the problem,
And the
right? There's
difference is
something
is
that's
is the
right for
lens.
that teacher to be able to say, "Hey, I'm noticing it's hard for you to follow what I'm saying because as soon as I start talking, I notice that you're looking away, you're looking at your desk, you're getting small before you go under the desk, right? So I'm realizing, right,
Mhm.
that it's difficult for you to hear what I'm saying, to receive the instruction.
Yeah.
Let's solve that together." Like if I were to, right, like write it out for you, or after I tell all the students and I come to you and I just quietly make sure that you understand. There's so many things.
I think when you have that lens, when you have
Mhm.
that basic understanding and you're looking at behaviors for clues, it also opens up this, like, flexibility in you.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
example, for my youngest, she saw a huge shift when in the fact that he has the ability and he's allowed to just get up and move to he
Mhm.
has specific
Nice,
areas that he can get out of his desk, go to a cozy corner, and
nice.
I would have students who couldn't come with me on to the carpet time. I could spend my energy
Mhm.
correcting them, keeping them in
Yes,
their bubble,
yes.
or I can make focus fidget boxes, and I
Mhm.
just tell them, "Go get your focus putty," and they had therapeutic putty, so their hands are contained, they're
Mhm.
working, but they're sitting and listening, but it
Mhm.
requires that, like, flexibility. It requires
Yes.
that understanding, and so as a teacher, it felt very frustrating to spend an entire year teaching children how to use, focus tools, how to
Mhm.
advocate for themselves, how to
Mhm.
be able to recognize, like, "Oof, I need to move around." It
Mhm.
only work those accommodations only work as much as the next teacher will allow them to
Yeah.
utilize them.
Yeah, yeah. Again, we need a full 180, and you'll love his book because you will be like, "Yes, this is
I
what I was talking about." Imagine a whole school that was just as curious, just as flexible, just as attuned as you were to
Oh,
your
yeah.
kids. Imagine a school of educators like you, it would
I think we
be
would be
world changing.
living a it would exactly. I think it would be world change. I think, like, it's so it's so silly that I'm here in my 40s being like, "I'm gonna be a content creator and we're gonna do
Mhm.
this," but it's like, I so fully believe that we need to amplify voices like yours
Yes.
because if we center nervous system safety and
Mhm,
we hit
mhm.
children and they grow up,
Yes,
like, there's no
yes.
way that this society is not going to be caring and empathetic
Mhm.
and
Yes,
kind
and
because
great at solving problems together.
yes!
No more, like, unilateral solutions imposed like we get from, every
Yes.
direction. No, it's so great, and again, you're doing this work, like, you keep pointing to, like, "I'm so glad you're doing this." I'm like, "You're doing this, like, you're the one who created the platform for me to be able to speak on." So, I just
Well,
think you're amazing.
oh, I agree. I could keep this going forever. I do
Yeah,
wanna respect your time,
yeah.
though. So
Thank
can I
you.
ask you one more question before I
Sure.
have to say goodbye? Because
Yes.
for the parents who are listening to this right now, or they really
Mhm,
want to be more gentle with themselves and reparent their inner child, but they're deep in those power struggles every day, what can we send them off with just, like,
mm,
one small shift that they can start
mhm.
making today?
Well, again, we've luckily there's been a through line through this whole conversation, so I love ending on this. The curiosity piece
That's what I
is
was gonna
really
say.
key. Yay! That again, to notice in themselves, um, to notice in their kids, like, hey, again, I see you're having a hard time, right? What's
Mhm.
up? Just that simple line will change everything. And then
Yes.
again, to be able to direct that to yourself when you're having a hard time, to say, gosh, I'm having a hard time. What's up? What feels hard? What's one small thing that I can do to bring right more calm into my nervous system? And so, yeah, I think if we end on the key is curiosity, it will
Stay c
be
Yes,
really
stay
great.
curious. Let's
Stay
just all stay
curious.
curious. Oh my god.
Exactly.
I love that. Thank you so much for giving me some of
Yes.
your time. I appreciate it.
Yes.
I'm this is a subject that's so near and dear to my heart,
Yes.
and so I appreciate you coming and breaking it down and giving us, I think, easy to implement ways to start this process, like,
Mhm.
today.
Yes, I hope so, and again, I have for your listeners, if they're interested, they can go to my website, and I think you'll probably have it in the show notes, but just ashevillefamilycounseling.com/podcast-gift, and I've created a PDF called the Defiance Decoder. So it's about noticing those earliest signs of dysregulation so that we can catch them, we can, again, attune with them, and we can change this whole cycle of focusing on the behaviors to those earliest signs.
You
So
did that
again,
for
so thrilled to be
us?
here. Yes, I did
Oh
it for
my
you and your wonderful community.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I'm
Yes.
absolutely gonna have all of that in the show notes.
Yeah,
Can you
great.
also let people know where they can find you on social medias or if they
Yes.
are in your area and would like to maybe
Yes.
talk to you about being
Yes.
connecting with
Yes.
you?
Yeah, so anywhere in North Carolina, y people can reach out, and again, the best way is ashevillefamilycounseling.com.
Okay.
Asheville Family Counseling is our Instagram, and Stacey Curnow is our Facebook. But yeah, I would love for people to stay connected, and again, if they sign up for the Defiance Decoder, it will also be this invitation because I send out a weekly email newsletter full of these tips and techniques and really mindset strategies to create more connection with our kids and again to ourselves because that's where the real disconnection happened right 30, 40 years ago in our own
Yes.
childhood.
So
So
much reparenting, so much healing. I
yes,
love it. Thank you
yes,
so much. Thank
you're
you so
so welcome. Thank you so much.
This conversation just feels like one of those gentle but necessary rewires because when we start to shift from they won't to they can't, it changes everything. It changes how we respond, it changes the story we tell ourselves, and most importantly, it changes the relationship we're building with our kids and with ourselves. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about parenting, this is about unlearning the systems we were raised in, the ones that prioritize control over connection and choosing something different, something more aligned, something that actually supports our nervous systems instead of consistently overwhelming them. And if this episode resonated with you, if you found yourself thinking, oh, this is what I've been missing, I would love for you to stay connected with this community. You can follow the NeuroSpicy Mom Pod everywhere you're listening. Share this episode with someone who needs it. And if you're looking for a deeper, more cozy corner of the internet, you can join us over on Patreon, where we keep these conversations going in a more personal and supportive way. I'm going to have Stacey's information down in the show notes below so you can easily find her PDF and ask her any questions if you have any. We are building a space where you don't have to perform, don't have to mask, and you don't have to figure out this on your own. Thank you so much for being here. Take care of yourself and your nervous system, and I'll see you next week. Ta-ta!